بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. I've had the great honor of reading the Sharh of Mishkatul Masabih. This one's just been published in a really fine edition, Zujajatul Masabih. Many of us know of the book, the Kitab, the collection of Mishkatul Masabih. Very important book. It was authored by a very famous scholar, Imam Muhammad al-Khatib al-Tabrizi, rahimahullah alayh. Now, this book is a wonderful book. It's been a staple text of the Dars al-Nizami, and it really enriches the students' experience of engaging with the Hadith tradition. The book is written according to the methodology, if you like, or the ideas or the inspiration of the Shafi'i madhab, which is a madhab that the author Imam Muhammad al-Khatib al-Tabrizi rahmatullahi alayh was a follower of. And so sometimes for students that can create a little bit of discontentment or a little bit of a confusion. So the author of the Sharh, Zujajatul Masabih, the book's called, and the author is someone that hasn't really been well received or well known in our communities, but deserves recognition. As-Sayyid Abul Hasanat al-Hyderabadi. And so he's modeled his book according to the structure and the pattern of the Mishkat. But however, what he does here is he brings out the proofs of the Hanafi schools. It's an authoritative book. It's a valuable book for students of knowledge to read, and it's received a lot of recognition, commendation as well. And I'm just going to quickly go through some of the pages of the book with you, maybe try and bring out some highlights for you to try and get you to think about why you should have a copy of this book, and it should be a book that you're continuously reading, especially for students of knowledge. Right at the beginning, it's mentioned Kitabun Azimun في أدلة الإمام الأعظم أبي حنيفة النعمان. So that's enough for us to really think about the importance of this book, because it's important to think about the proofs of the Imam Abu Hanifa. Of course, he's referring to the school as well. So the Sheikh really brings out the proofs of the Hanafi school as well, and it falls within the genre of Ahadithul Ahkam. So traditions to do with rulings. That's an important genre when it comes to studying fiqh as well. And sometimes, because when students study hadith, there's a sort of different epistemology at play there, as opposed to the Hanafi madhab, which has a different epistemology, a different set of usul when it comes to engaging with the Quran and the Sunnah, if you like, as well. And sometimes if a student isn't aware of the differences and he or she hasn't been trained well in both traditions, if you like, then sometimes they can find themselves in a little bit of confusion. So that's very important to bear in mind as well. And also for هذا الكتاب, it said at the beginning here, يرد على من ظن أن المذهب حنفي قائم على الآراء, that there's these aspersions often lobbied at the Hanafi school that they're not based on hadith, or they're based on weak hadith, or there aren't enough strong hadith in the madhab. And anyone who studies the madhab will know that this is far from the truth. This is usually made by people who don't understand the school in terms of how it operates, how it works, or people who have just read people attacking the school, or have some gripe with how the mazahib work. So the mazahib are very important. The schools of law are very important in terms of giving us a method and usul of how to engage with the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. وَلَيْسَ لَهُ اعْتِمَادٌ عَلَى الْكِتَابِ وَالسُّنَّةِ. And so this idea that the Hanafis don't really have a foundation which is based on the Quran and Sunnah, this is completely not true, and it finds itself on certain places on social media. Even students of knowledge who may not have had a full exposure of how the Hanafi school, its history, its evolution, its usul, may become confused. So this book helps in some way in dealing with that. Of course, I would always say to students that aside from your studies, you should also be trying to understand the history of the Hanafi school as well. And so the author has produced this wonderful book, and it's a very important book for students of knowledge, especially if you're following the Hanafi school of law. But if you're not following a school of law, or you're not following the Hanafi school of law, you're following a different school of law, it's still very, very useful. And credit must also go to Sheikh Abu Sahel Muhammad Saad, Sheikh, who has done the tahqiq, who's done a lot of research on this book. He's done verification of each hadith by going back to the primary collections. He's done some detailed takhrij of the hadith, and he cited them in the book for you as well. There's grading that's taken place as well. There are also, you'll find in the book, short biographies of scholars who are not generally well known. And it's important that we know who the people are who we benefit from even until this day as well. There are also passages in there where he brings out difficult words, or words that might seem obscure and that can't really just be translated to English, and require for a student of knowledge to really try and think about what that word actually means, or the Prophet ﷺ is actually imparting to the primary audience at the time, which were the companions, of course, as well. There are additions of proofs as well. He answers very concisely some of the objections that might be raised by hadith scholars on particular hadiths as well. There's been numbering done there, which is very, very useful as well. And there are also beneficial notes, fawaid, on certain masail. So I'll just give you one example that I came across when I was reading the first volume. So the book has been published in 4 volumes. But if you, for example, were to pick up the chapter or the kitab on tahara, immediately on the following page in the footnote, you'll find a discussion. And you'll find there that the Shaykh talks about how the Sunnah is to be understood as an ikmal of the farz. Now, to those who are new, won't quite understand the significance of this statement, but it's actually quite important because it tells you how the Sunnah operates in the minds of the Hanafi scholars. It's doing ikmal, it's completing the farz. So when the hadiths are brought in about Sunnah or mustahab acts, one should also think about how close is it to completing the farz, which are the 4 that we have, for example, in this case of wudu. But one should also be reasoning, thinking deeply about how the Prophet ﷺ is connecting that sunnah to the ikmal of the farz, because the farz are obviously epistemologically, they are certain. The sunnah have a different discussion. So this is very, very important, these legal meanings that sometimes people get involved in. All they look at is the isnad only. But what one should be doing is also reasoning with the transmission as well. And that's another way of thinking about how to engage with the Prophet ﷺ and his legacy. And I always argue with students that fiqh is very, very important for one very important reason. And that is that it teaches us how to try and emulate the Prophet ﷺ in the most beautiful of ways, in the most consistent of ways. And in every detail, in every minutiae, the fuqaha really try to pin down what is the essence, what is really operating here. So you'll find that, for example, in this book as well. So credit goes to the muhaqqiq, Sheikh Abu Sahel Muhammad Saad as well, because he's really worked really hard. You can see the effort that's taken place in kind of bringing this book together, this really essential publication together. We've been told it took him 10 years to complete the work. He worked in the supervision of 2 important teachers, Sheikh Mufti Muhammad Ishaq Mana and Sheikh Dr. Ilyas Abdul Ghani. So this is an important work for students to have, to read and to engage with. And I really think it's an important addition to our turath, our inheritance, our legacy as Muslims, trying to understand how the prophetic tradition works. Lots of times we do find in certain quarters that people aim their arrows at the hadith tradition. Right? They try to undermine the hadith tradition. And that's a separate discussion for maybe some other time to have as well. So it's very, very important to bear in mind. And I think everybody should be reading this kitab. In the introduction, just a few more notes. There are some very, very useful fawaid at the beginning of the book as well. And the author, like I said, he hasn't left any stone unturned. You can see that he's engaged with books of the Tajreed of Imam Quduri, the Sharh Mukhtasar Tahawi by Imam Jassas Razi, and other books as well. So that's something to bear in mind as well. And it's received praise by many of the scholars. of the subcontinent and beyond, of course, as well. So this is something to bear in mind. There's a little bit of an introduction about the author himself, whose nasab, lineage, traced its way back to Sayyidina Hussein bin Ali. So that's mentioned there as well. And so these are things that one can really benefit from this book. There are also sources in terms of the books that he read. If you look in the Hawashi that he used, the Muhaqqiq, you'll find an exhaustive list of books that he's done. So he's done a lot of work for you. So I think everybody should read this book, benefit from this book. Hadith is something that is very important as a part of our tradition. We don't just read it for intellectual edification, but we read it for spiritual, moral guidance. And of course, the Prophet ﷺ was sent to this world to guide mankind as a means of mercy. So I hope you find that useful. If you have any questions, you can always reach out. And the credit really goes to Ismail Books for really bringing this publication out so that people like us can definitely benefit from it today. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.